pleasure to jump in and take a little bit of your time monthly to just hang out, for a lack of a better phrase. We don't get to do that obviously because of 2020 and the COVID, and so this came to this 30-minute check-in coffee with an architect because of that. As we get ready to gradually pull out of COVID, this may morph into something else, or it may stay the same. Who knows? But it is what it is for today, and we're really, really lucky and fortunate to have the one and only Mr. Jim Lord, President and CEO of KGA Architecture, and he's going to be sharing with us some of his thoughts of the AIA in general, maybe economic outlook from his perspective based on how they do business, and keep in mind that they're international firm, or work on international projects, so to speak. But I'm not going to steal too much of his thunder because most of you guys know who Jim is, and if you don't, you should know who he is. But with that, Mr. Lord, welcome, sir. If you so care to say a few words before we start diving into what everybody wants to hear you say, please, the floor is yours.
All right. Well, thank you, Lee, for setting this up. Good morning, everyone. I was thinking last week when I was listening to Ed Vance, I need to get that presentation voice like he's got. So he's a tough one to follow. So I wanted to start off with well, I was going to start off with giving a little history, but Jim Bagley, that is the best St. Patrick's Day jacket I've seen in a long time. So wow.
Thank you, my friend.
That is
Wow.
nice.
So
I figured I had to show up in style, right? It is St. Patty's Day, even if we're all still sequestered.
It is. I wish we all had some green beer right now. So
yeah.
So I thought Ed did an excellent job doing context last week. So I wanted to do a little bit of that. So I arrived in Las Vegas originally in 1967 because I was, zero ages or negative some numbers when I showed up. My father was assigned to the Air Force, so I went to high school here, and then took off for education. So you can see there's the U of M hat in the back there. So yes, Wyndham and I were in the studio mates, and that's how Wyndham got here. So my involvement with AIA started actually in 1985. At that point in time, the lunch meetings were at a place called Starboard Tack over on Sahara, and we were the host of the Western Mountain Region Conference that year. And so I got to work with Patrick Klink on part of the hosting duties. So my interaction with AIA has been long. I was telling Lee yesterday that of late, though, most of my interaction is not so much with the local or the state chapter, it's with the knowledge communities. And we had an interesting conversation about what those are. So I don't know how many on this call know what knowledge communities are. So I'm just going to take a few minutes and talk about that first before we move on into the economic outlook and all that stuff. So as part of your, and please, Randy or Kelly, if I get this wrong, correct me, but as part of your dues as members of AIA, you have the ability to elect to be part of knowledge communities. They are an added benefit. And when we used to sign up with a card back in the old days, they were on the back of the form and you got to check them. So I looked this morning, there are 21 knowledge communities that are subsets of the AIA. They are basically gatherings within the AIA of subject matter experts. They are like-minded individuals. That's what I like about them. So if your passion is health, you can join the health group. The first one listed is the Academy in Architecture for Health. And so they are conversations where when you go are focused on that subject matter and are specific to that. So it's time to really drill down with your like-minded peers. So I have been for a number of years now, more than a decade, part of the Committee on Design. We are the knowledge community that is responsible for nominations for gold medal, firm of the year, that sort of thing. When the design standards come out, we're the peer review for that. It is a group that when you go to the meeting says, I don't, no offense, but I don't really want to talk about flashing details on rain screens today. I want to talk about quality of design and relationship to the community and those focus items. So it doesn't take away from anything else, but it is focused. Kelly, if you want to post somewhere the link to that page on KnowledgeNet, it's page 4856. I have it open. If you're an allied member, knowledge communities want to talk to you because they're not as clearly obvious to a lot of people. They have a hard time getting sponsors for their conferences, but they gather all the time. The trick I was telling Lee is that because they are nationally focused, the challenge we have with knowledge communities raising funds to support our conferences is that most allied members' marketing budgets is local or regional. And so the next design conference for Committee on Design is supposed to be in Denver. And so if you're in the Denver area, you can say, okay, there's going to be 100 decision makers from firms all over the country there. But you get the East Coast guys, and you get Seattle, and you get Washington, and you get people who aren't necessarily in your budget sector. So these knowledge communities have a hard time supporting their individual conferences because the budget to your individual budgets don't necessarily relate to the total market sector you're getting. So if you're talking to your owners of your companies, you might want to say there's a budget that's maybe corporate level where I can get decision makers from across the country all in one spot. They're all together for 3 days and I can go and get them all. Can I expand my budget to get to them, or do you have some more? It's an interesting thing to look. So I encourage you to look at the knowledge communities and see if there's something there that you have a particular affinity for. The one that's called CRAN is the residential designer one, so that's easy. You get to understand. Some of the other ones are a little more confusing, but they are a wonderful group within AIA, and that's kind of where I've been focusing. I find it's far more to gets more to my passion than some of the other things we do. So I apologize to Randy and Kelly for not spending as much time at the local level, but there are national levels and in some cases international levels where you can focus with AIA as well. And so that's where I'm going. So my story is a little different than Ed and Eric, who were the previous two speakers. So that was my long-winded introduction to Jim and AIA.
That's a great introduction, and I learned something new as I shared with you when we did our prep meeting. And for those allied members that are joining us today, my take is that, because I'm an allied member too, is that it's always nice to know where the connection is, right, with the local and regional chapters and what they're doing from a national level. For somebody who, such as myself, where I have a national and certain degree international presence from our company, I can push that stuff up the channel because there's marketing budgets a little bit bigger up there that I think should be connecting with AIA on a national level too, because it only helps. It helps me in my position locally and regionally, but I would imagine that it also helps the AIA local chapters by doing such. So thanks for sharing that, Jim. I really appreciate it. And the link is in the chat for anybody who wants more information about that. But I open it up now for questions for Mr. Lord. Any questions?
Jim, I'll start off kind of easy. What are you seeing in 2021 and moving forward? What's the market look like for you all?
Well, I can tell you that we are very excited as we sit here today. Somewhere around the holidays, somebody unleashed the floodgates on fee proposal writing, and it's pretty much across all market sectors. So we have gone back to writing, 2 or 3 a week like we used to do prior to COVID. We are seeing lots of pent-up demand becoming unleashed. So we work at KGA, we work in all the market sectors except residential. That's just not a good fit for our office culture, so we just stay out of the custom homes and that sort of thing. But healthcare never really slowed down for us. The scale changed to be smaller, but it kept going. But we are seeing hospitality as booming right now. We are seeing private schools as moving on additions right now. We are seeing some of the institutional work coming back. So the police department has decided it's time to do work again, and some of the other public agencies are working. And there are rumblings even on the state level about resurrecting some projects that went on hold. So we are very optimistic that come the second half of this year, we'll be going like gangbusters. I was excited yesterday that we had new employee interviews yesterday for the first time in a while. So we're very optimistic. I think the optimism is out there. Whether the cash flow to go with it is going to parallel or lag behind, I think that's a debate. But there's lots of speculative projects appearing on at least in the fee requests category.
That beats the alternative, right?
It definitely
Absolutely.
does.
Yeah, that's great to hear. Thanks, Jim.
Thanks, Jim. Anyone else have a question for Mr. Lord?
Yeah, this is Tom. I'll ask a question. Jim, since you're all over the country here, do you see your designs changing because of what we learned through COVID, and maybe how do you see that happening?
That's a very good question. And so we do designs out of both of our offices. We have an Austin office as well, which gets us a lot of Midwestern work, as well as here as our primary base. And we are seeing a revisiting of most of our programs having to do with space. The conversation about whether everybody comes back to work or not, I think, is sort of being answered, that most of our clients are trying to figure out how to have some part of their staff remote on a permanent basis. So projects that are in the early phase, we're being asked to revisit the programs again to see if the buildings are too big, or we reconfigure them. So flex space for people to come into the office part-time and leave is becoming a new program scope for us. So we actually have a school in Texas, the admin office. We did the punch list last week, and we're revising the office layout today to change permanent offices into flex offices for them. So the staffing component for is clearly changed as we go forward. Some of the other components, since we do a lot of regulated projects, those laws haven't changed yet. So jails and prisons and back of house for police stations, those things are still mandated by law, and they haven't changed because of COVID. But flexibility has definitely become the key word in pretty much every meeting.
Nice.
Mark,
Hey,
you had a
Jim.
question?
Yeah, good to see you. Yeah, it's great to hear things are kind of turning the corner as of late. We're seeing the same thing, which is great. Our marketing department is hopping again.
Yeah.
So that's great to hear. I've got a simple question. What do you like to do for fun? I mean, I've known you as this, professional architect all these years. What do you like to do for fun?
Well, travel is the big one. So talk about pent up demand, not being able to, it was a year ago, 2 weekends ago was the last time I got to leave the country. So, I like to take pictures. I like to sketch. I like to go to soccer games in other countries. So, anytime that I can get on the plane, I'm good to go. So this pent up demand is, kind of hurt in that regard. I know I've driven my kids and my wife nuts because we can't go anywhere. And I've also, I think COVID-19 stands for these 19 pounds I've added by not being able to hike all over the place. So yeah, I'm hoping that with everything we got going on, if it means we just have a green card when we show up at the airport and says, I've got my shot, you just put it next to your visa and your passport and everything else, and I'm good to go. So I'm very carefully watching when somebody will let the borders go, and when we can actually assemble in groups, even for ball games in this country. So I'm really optimistic these days.
I'm curious how you were able to only put on 19 pounds. Yeah, very, very nice. There's a question from John. John? Okay, well, his question for you is, oh, go ahead.
Sorry, Lee.
No,
Hi,
no, go ahead.
Jim. My question is just regarding your company culture. How has the pandemic affected interaction in the office and you guys' day-to-day operations?
Yeah, that's a conversation we have all the time. We like many design firms are very collaborative, and we are both that way internal to our office and with our builder teams. So we try and get people like Core and in early all the time. We love to sit around the table and brainstorm. And so we're finding some of these social versions, Zoom and GoToMeeting and all of these, tough to do that because we lose that spontaneity of eye contact, that ability to poke each other in fun to move forward. And so we've cheated a little bit. We've kind of divided up our big old conference room and so that we can get people in there and sort of sit around the table and at least look at each other over our masks. But we're trying to make that happen as best we can. We've gotten much better, much quicker on video meetings and GoToMeetings, and we've learned that you can rotate your models and record the meeting, and it looks like you've made movies when you haven't, and all of those things. So with our clients, we've taught a lot of them how to collaborate virtually. So it saves us travel time, but we still lose intimacy. With our staff, it's sort of become much more personal as to which software we use. In our office, the interior group seems to go with Teams. The building group seems to go with GoToMeeting. The production guys seem to be using something I can't even log into. So, but we're pretty sure that when we're able to all come back together, we're going to have some employees who won't come back. Their personal lives, which is an important part of the KGA culture, is to have your own time, your personal time, is very important for them, and they've gotten quite used to having time with their children before or after. So we are in the process, like our clients, of looking to see whether we can reconfigure part of our office to allow for them to stay working remote. I anticipate probably 10 to 15% of our office will not come back. And they're talented people and we don't want to lose them. So we're trying to figure that out. But the KGA culture has always been big on family. We were cut off at noon prior to COVID. We had always been take a longer weekend, which was good for those of us who like to go to the airport. Since COVID, we've gone to four days a week, since the building departments, et cetera, as you all know, are closed on Fridays. And as we've come back to full time, we are still closed on Fridays. So we are much more flexible, but we're big believers in personal time and family time. And so we're trying to figure out how that works. But I envision we'll be a much more flexible, much more remote office at the end of the year than we ever would have envisioned starting last year.
A lot of companies really are going to have that. You use the word flex from a project design, but from a culture standpoint, it's certainly more of a hybrid approach on how people come back. Any other questions? Jim, I have a question for you. So you've done obviously work with conventions, Caesars being one of them. What about your perspective on how conventions come back to Las Vegas? Any thoughts on that and what that's going to look like in the future?
Well, that one's a really interesting question. I think we're all aware here that AIA National has said there'll be no face-to-face contact for the rest of this calendar year, which I know has pushed those of us in the planning of conventions off for another year. So how that's going to work will be very interesting. I'm not sure. We were working as part of the convention center expansion program. We were actually doing their corporate office move when this started, and I know even the programming portion of that has changed, even for the convention center itself. So I don't really have an answer for that, as to, because there's still a need for large groups to gather, and I think walking around in your plexiglass bubbles is going to be not very conducive. But I know the convention center's ongoing, the Tesla program underground tunnels is ongoing. Everything's moving forward to return. I just don't really know how big it's going to be when it returns. We were doing the Forum project, which is over by the Ferris wheel, the big convention center where they were going to have the NFL draft. So we finished that in time for the draft, and that big building is still sitting empty. It's never had the public in it yet in a year. But none of our clients are looking to reconfigure those into smaller bubbles. There's human beings need to have large gatherings, and we'll just have to figure it out. But nobody on our team yet has figured out how that's going to work or necessarily when.
Yeah, it certainly will be interesting. Thanks, Jim. Any other questions from anyone? I'm monitoring the chats.
Yeah, Jim, this is Chris Levitt with Revolution. I know you have other offices too, specifically the one in Texas. And how have you seen the market change there now that Texas lifted the mask and mandates and all those other bans that they had in the past?
Yeah, Chris, I was there the day that the day that the mask lift was going, and I can tell you that pretty much to a business, they posted on their doors or on their websites that while we share the governor's optimism, we need to look out for our staff and our employees. And if you want to come in, you still got to wear your mask. So there was not the fervor of everybody running around kissing and hugging each other with no masks that was sort of expected. Austin, which is the liberal portion of the state, was very, very strong in their decisions individually that they didn't necessarily need to comply. So there was no change. I went to 2 job meetings that day and the next day, and everybody did the same social distancing and mask portion that they had before, because it's a personal choice. Most of our clients are still following the same social distancing and same cleaning practices. I was in Houston and Dallas areas earlier in the week, and in the remote areas, when you pull up to fill up the car, people weren't wearing theirs, but you didn't have any shaming, the negative of mask shaming. You didn't have any shaming because you still had yours on. I think slowly, as the rates go down, more people will do that. But most businesses that we are working with are still maintaining all their same policies. It was a little too early for most of our clients.
Yeah, something seems to suggest the rest of the nation will also trail that same way, right? It's an acceptance level is really what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah.
We are coming to the top of the hour, so I want to ask if there's any final questions. All right, Jim, any closing thoughts that you'd like to provide?
Well,
cast of characters.
Yeah, again, Lee, thank you for setting this up. I know we all look forward to the day when we can do this in person, but I think this is a good way for us to hear positive things from each other. I think we can, if we look at what positive aspects and what lessons that we take out of this whole year that are good for us, there are many of them. We try and remind ourselves of those as opposed to the negative ones. We try and look forward to where the economy is going, and I think all indicators are that we're all going to be busy, so good for all of us. And we definitely look forward to the day when we can all collaborate face to face again. I think will end up being an excellent year for everybody in the profession. And I encourage everybody to just keep looking to go forward. We had enough time to dwell on the negative stuff. Let's just leave it and let's all go forward. And I look forward to hopefully working with each of you again individually or new if we haven't. We've started in our office doing the let's go out to lunch or let's go out to coffee in person again. So
Nice.
I know that a couple people couldn't make the meeting today and they've emailed me already. So if you'd like to continue conversations outside of this, please let us do that. KGA is in year 45 or 46 or something like that. So we are planning for years 50 and 60. We intend to be around for a long time. There are a number of partners that are much younger than I am, since I'm the old guy. And if you don't know them, please reach out to them. In our office, Lee Norsworthy is our director of architecture on the building side. Brian Henley leads our design department, and Chelsea Lavelle leads our interiors department. They are all at meetings with Caesars right now to redo another one of their room towers. So if you want to reach out to those individuals, please do. Their emails are pretty simple: Brian at KGA Design, Lee at KGA Design, and Chelsea at KGA Design. All the partners can be found pretty easily. Just say hey. Invite them out for a coffee. They're all Starbucks fanatics. And please, let's all reconnect like we want to do, and plan for success. And don't forget, Kelly over there is working hard, and make sure she gets the props that AIA deserves for helping us all stay connected.
Thanks, Jim.
All right.
Thank you, Jim. This was a wonderful conversation. Thank you for doing this. And thank you so much for the shout out to AIA, local and national. We do promote those knowledge communities and hope that all the members will take advantage of them. So appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. Yep.
You gotta love the fact that when one retires, they still linger in the background. Randy, it's so good to have you on this Coffee with an Architect meeting.
I wouldn't miss it. It's great.
You're so
Thank you so much.
You're so awesome. Jim, thank you very, very much, sir. As suspected, an amazing 30 minutes of sharing of knowledge and perspective, and we're very grateful for you giving up of your time. We wish you at KGA and the entire team that you have there much success. As you get ready to celebrate, upcoming 50 years, we wish you another great 50 years beyond that. With that, to the allied members, please keep in mind that this Coffee of an Architect is designed for you. So if you have suggestions that you'd like to see, either from people that you'd like to speak on it or projects that you'd like to showcase, send me an email or send Kelly, Carlos, or Randy an email. Say, hey, you guys thought about this? And we'll definitely give it its due look at. And finally, don't forget, you can sponsor this, right? For a mere $5,000 a coffee hour, or this year only $100, you could get yourself sponsored for a Coffee with an Architect and have the first few minutes to talk about what it is that you do within your company. With that, I want to wish all of you guys a very, very great rest of your March. Enjoy March Madness. Stay safe, and we will see you next month.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate seeing you.
Thanks, Jim.
Thanks, Jim.
And happy St. Patrick's Day to everybody.
Yes,
all.
happy Thanksgiving.